let's talk about Blake Lively, okay? So if you've been on the internet today, you have seen the article by People Magazine that Blake Lively is suing Justin Baldoni for sexual harassment. Now, if you know what you know, they were on the movie It Ends With Us, which is based on a book by Colleen Hoover, and the entire book theme is domestic violence. So a couple things before we go into having this conversation that I'm about to have. Number one, I always believe the victim, especially when it is a woman. And that's just what I'm going to do until the end of time, because statistically, it is proven that when women come out, when it involves DV, 99.9% of the time, look it up yourself, look up the stats yourself, the women are not lying. So the victim is not lying. So I am going to believe Blake Lively, regardless of how I feel about Blake, how I feel about Justin, how I feel about the whole situation, until proven wrong, because that's just how I feel when it is in regards to domestic violence cases. Also, when it involves sexual harassment cases, anything in that department. So there is a list of things that Blake and her lawyers have talked about, have said about this situation. Go to the People Magazine article and you can kind of get more into that. But Justin's team basically has said that this is false, outrageous, and intentionally salacious with an intent to publicly hurt. So this is going to be a mess. This is going to be a hot topic, and we are really going to see what it's about to fucking happen, and we're going to see the truth pretty quickly, in my opinion. Because this was done on a movie set, there is going to be proof. There is going to be proof no matter what side of the coin this flips on. There will be proof 1000%, because this was in front of and going to be around hundreds of people, and there are parts of the document that basically says that there had to be rules and restrictions because of how uncomfortable Blake felt. Now, what I will say, because I know this is going to get brought up, because this is just how the internet will be interneting, if we take away all of this, if we take away being Blake suing Justin, if we take away all that, okay, and we just go off of the blank slate of the movie itself and the promotion of this movie, I will continue to say that I feel that the way that Blake promoted this movie was extremely inappropriate. The topic about this movie is all about DV, relationship DV, specifically women in abusive relationships with men. And the fact that every opportunity that Blake had to talk about this movie, to push forward women that have gone through DV, that have been in these horrible relationships, and to give them a platform of how to get out, she took every opportunity to basically not talk about it, like, at all, make jokes about it, and make it seem like this is a lighthearted movie to go to with your girlfriends and wear flower crowns and be like the cutest girls on the block. Whereas Justin did everything in his power to do the opposite, which was focus on victims of DV, focus on the topic of DV, and really pushing that forward. Now, that also being said, I did always find it very interesting and weird that the entire cast would not do any press with Justin. That includes the author, Colleen Hoover. I found that to be extremely odd and weird, and that they were kind of ostracizing him. I always found that to be very odd. I also found it very odd that Blake and Ryan, her husband, for some odd-ass reason, thought that they were going to be the Barbie Oppenheimer and they were going to tag team their movies together, when Blake's movie has a extremely sensitive topic that a lot of women are going through right now, and would have been an amazing opportunity for her to speak up and have a conversation about it. I think even on the most microscopic small level, every woman I've ever come in contact with goes through a situation where a man has abused his power, has abused the relationship, whether that is verbally, physically, emotionally. Every woman I've ever met has come in contact with a man who has treated them like shit, and has felt like they've had to stay in that job, that relationship, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, and doesn't know how to get out of those situations. And the fact that Blake did not take the opportunity to acknowledge women that have gone through that, give them and offer support, and have an incredible conversation about it is forever going to be extremely disappointing to me. I read that book, and it's one of a handful of books that I've cried reading. I don't really cry when I read books, and it is one of maybe 3 books I've ever cried reading, because I could not believe how just on point that book was and how well written it was, how emotional it was, especially at the very end of the book. If you want to read it, read it. If you want to watch the movie, watch the movie. I find the scene when they're in the hospital bed and the main character that Blake played, is talking to Justin's character about what would you do if the same thing was happening to your daughter. I found that to be extremely moving. Now, what I will say is that even though I do not like how Blake promoted the movie, I don't like how she went on press tours about this movie. I don't like the conversations she's had with reporters, even though I hate everything she did in that regards, and I don't approve of it, and I don't think it was good. I think it was actually completely a middle finger to DV victims. I'm still going to believe Blake that this happened until proven wrong, because I will continue to forever believe victims, and I will continue to forever believe women, because that is what we need to be doing in order for other women to come forward. I also have a hard time believing, and again, this could be a complete massive misstep that's really fucked up, but I have a really hard time believing that Blake Lively, a massive celebrity worth millions, billions of dollars, whose husband is well beloved and very also well known, very powerful, very rich, whose best friend is Taylor Swift, the most looked at woman on the planet at this point. I have a hard time believing that she would accuse somebody of sexual harassment and be lying about it. I would have a very hard time thinking that she would do that, because if she did, and we find out that it's a bunch of bullshit and that it's all a bunch of lies, that's really fucked up and crazy and delusional. And I have a hard time believing her lawyers, her PR team, her entire team, her family members, her friends, not one of them was like, yo, we can't just lie about shit like this. And she was like, nah, fuck you guys. I also have a hard time believing that her entire team would advise her to do this if she was fucking lying. I just don't believe that in any way, shape, or form. I do not believe that. I also would not ever be surprised of a man doing a dumbass thing, of a man being an asshole, of a man being an abuser, of a man being a piece of shit. I will never, ever, ever, as long as I live, since about 5+ years ago, I will never, ever believe that a man is pure and wonderful and good to their fucking core. Because once you do that, they just love to disappoint you. Love to disappoint you. And this also would not be the first time that a man, okay, that says he's a feminist, that says he loves and supports women, that says he loves and supports domestic violence, people like victims, that says that he's such a good man, that has a podcast that talks about all these things, that he's emotionally available, that he's such a good person. Beep, 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 beep. This would not be the first time that someone on the outside that appears to be a good person, that appears to be amazing, is an evil sack of shit. This is not going to be the first time that has happened. We have seen so many examples of, oh, they're an upstanding man. They're such a good person. I can't believe they would do this. I've never seen this before. Blah, 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 blah. And then as it starts unraveling, you find out that they're actual pure fucking scum and have been since day goddamn one. It would not surprise me. I will be interested to hear from other co-stars. I will be, especially if they're involved in the lawsuit, but I also will be. Something that my mom brought up that I didn't even think of was he was on the show Jane the Virgin, and I would be very interested to hear what the cast of that show think of him, because he was on that show for a very long time. He was a main person on that show, and I would be very interested to hear what they think and if they've had similar situations with him as well. Now listen, he has said in his past that he is a flawed person. He has gone through things in his life, traumas in his life, etc., etc., etc. But that doesn't mean that when you have trauma in your life, you get to put trauma onto other people and continue the cycle of fucking trauma. You don't get to fucking do that. And also, I will say, in the deep, black, disgusting part of my mind, I do wonder why it's taken so long for this to come out and be talked about. And why the entire cast, the entire crew, nobody on this team said one thing about this. So I am interested to see what comes of this. But no matter what, until proven wrong, I'm going to believe Blake Lively. And that's just what it is, because I will support women from the jump, not men.